Welcome back to episode 6, our final segment in our class of building and using a corporate sponsorship sales system. I'm Rick Jones, and today we're going to examine the final 4 steps of our 12-step process. So let's get right to it. Step number 9 is dating. Like so many of the other steps, this one is very, very critical. And it starts with, what do you do when you come out of the presentation after you've gotten to the prospect? First thing I like to do is send a handwritten note immediately back to all the parties that were in the room. And the way I do that is I have the envelopes and the note cards already in my briefcase. And all I've got to do is write a handwritten note and immediately go to a mailbox and drop them off so that they get there very, very quickly. The second thing you want to do is, if they've asked you any questions, and remember from the session before, I talked about the fact that I always leave one question unanswered, even if I know the answer, so that I can quickly and responsibly get back to them. And I usually try to do that within 24 hours, and it gives me another chance to have a dialogue with them. Maybe get some feedback we hadn't gotten the day before. The third thing you've got to do is get a timeline for a decision. You need to know, can we make a decision in a month? Can we make a decision in 3 months? Can we make a decision in a year? What's the process for getting a decision? Then the fourth thing you got to do is continue to add value, continue to stay connected to them without smothering them. And this is feel. I mean, when you date, it's about the chemistry. What kind of feel do you have? And so in this case, you got to know, when should you call them? When should you email them? When should you text them? What should you do to stay in touch with them? But at the end of the day, you got to get an answer. We've got to get an answer. I can live with yes. I can live with no. Maybes, not so much. And so you've got to get an answer and hopefully ultimately close the deal. Now, what's going to happen? Well, if they say yes, we'll get to that in step number 10. But what if they say no? And they're going to say no a lot. Remember, we said we're trying to make the Baseball Hall of Fame, which means we're trying to bat 300, which means we fail 7 out of 10 times. So 7 out of 10 times we've gone through these complete 8 steps, and we're still going to get a no. We're going to get a no. So what happens to the ones that got away? Well, the first thing I like to do is I ask them to tell me why they're declining the opportunity. And I try to get them to be as exact and as specific as they possibly can be. Then I ask them what they might be looking for. And again, I try to get them to be specific and exact. And then I start looking for changes in their organization. Watch the trades to see if maybe the person you presented to is no longer there, that you might be in a position to pitch a new person. There's lots and lots of staff turnover, especially in marketing communications these days, and you never know when there might be a change. You also should take great notes and share them with your teammates so that the next time you're calling on that prospect, you're ahead of the game. And so we like to put that information in a database for later presentations. Sometimes you win in round 2. Sometimes you even win in round 3. Let me give you an example. Several years ago, I went to Allstate. I was representing the American Football Coaches Association, and we had a terrific program called the AFCA Good Works Team. And this was a team that coaches and SIDs nominated student athletes, football players, for their community service activities. And we would pick 11 from the Power 5 conferences and 11 from all the other conferences and divisions of football, and we would bring them annually or showcase them annually in our athletic AFCA magazine. And I thought it was perfect for Allstate. I mean, what could be better than the Allstate Good Hands, Good Works team? So I went and pitched it to their agency at the time, IMG, good friend Mike Murray, and he loved it, and he took it to the client, and unfortunately they told us no. Well, I really felt like it was perfect for them. So the following year I came back to Mike again, and again he loved it, and again he pitched it to the client, and once again the client told me no. Well, I'd kind of forgotten about it. Well, year 3 came around, and guess what? Allstate had a brand new director of sponsorship, a guy named Patrick Pierce. And Patrick found our presentation in his files, the files that he was reviewing when he first got there. And he loved the idea. And he reached out to Mike and said, I guess there's no chance this is still available. And Mike Murray called me and said, Rick, any chance the Good Works team is still available? And I said, absolutely. You were perfect for it. I didn't sell it to anybody else. And on the third try, Allstate bought it. And they're now in about year 10 or 11 of being the sponsor of the Allstate AFCA Good Works team. And so that's what you get by keeping good files and keeping in good contacts. But let's say they don't say no. They say yes. Yay, we have a win. And that leads us to step 10, which is the marriage. Now they've gone from being a prospect to being a client. And so what do you do with the marriage? Well, the first thing you do is you get your prenup done. First thing I like to do is get a term sheet. And that term sheet has all the assets that we are providing to them. And I ask for immediate feedback on the term sheet, just the assets we're giving them. Then we'll go to a letter of intent, which will again list the items that we had in the term sheet, but will now in the letter of intent tell us the things they're going to do, when they're going to pay us, how much they're going to pay us, terms, all that kind of stuff that goes into it. Then and only then do we go to a formal contract. And in that process, trust me, use a lawyer because you're going to want to make sure you document this correctly. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Lawyers don't negotiate deals. They memorialize deals. There's a difference. I've seen too many deals fall apart because some attorney that knows nothing about our business decides he or she's going to start negotiating the deal after the deal has been agreed upon. That's why I like to go from that term sheet to that letter of intent. And then again, the lawyer doesn't have to do anything but put that letter of intent into a contractual document. And that document's going to list all the assets and all the benefits. It's going to list the financial terms. It's going to list the payment terms. And oh yes, it's going to list the renewal terms. All that will lead to a very nice wedding. Now, that leads us to step number 11. Here's what I know about step 10. Step 10 may take weeks. In some cases with lawyers, it may take months. So you have to start 11 before you have a final contract. And that is developing the activation plan. So how do you develop an activation plan? Well, now it's going to be their plan, but you're going to be there to help them and guide them through that process. And so you become a collaborator with both the sponsor and with their agencies or agencies. And you'll help them develop the activation plan, what they're going to do with that. Remember, we talked about a sponsorship being like an automobile. It's a transportation vehicle, and you just got to drive it to meet your objectives. Well, that's the activation plan. We'll say we're going to take these assets, and we're going to use these assets to meet these specific business objectives and how we're going to do that. How we're going to do it with timelines and budgets and everything. A complete activation plan. And so then we write the plan. Then internally we share the plan with all the constituencies at that particular client. Then we get the plan approved. And then we get the resources needed to maximize that plan. But we constantly review and we'll tweak that plan because a plan is a living document. Moses didn't bring any of it down from the mountain. It is something that can change and change dramatically as we go along. And your agreement, your contract, needs to have enough wiggle room in there for changes and opportunities. Because you don't want to be so rigid where you say, no, that was the term. That's what we're doing when things have changed. And that's going to be very important as part of the contract and as part of the activation plan itself. Which then leads us to the final step, and that's the implementation and the sponsor servicing piece. There was an old black comedian several years ago named Flip Wilson, and he played a cross-dressing character named Geraldine. And Geraldine had a wonderful quote that I like to tell everybody in the sponsorship business. Geraldine said, "Don't let your mouth write a check your body can't cash." In other words, don't promise things to sponsors that you're not going to be able to deliver. We've got to put things in an agreement and then live up to the things that are in that agreement. Now, I say this, it's not about the bear in the woods. It's about the mosquitoes. It's all of the little things. It's about delivering all of those little things. And again, being flexible in the way that you deliver those things. So the good news now is you've caught some fish. So what do you do from here? Well, first of all, you continue to provide exceptional customer service. Number two, you simply care more for them than anybody else that they're doing business with. You under-promise and you over-deliver. You bring them value and things that are not in the contract without charging them anything, because you're now in a marriage. You communicate, you communicate, you communicate, you over-communicate. You keep the lines of dialogue open all the time. You ask for and get feedback. What's working, what's not working, what needs to be changed, what needs to be tweaked. And then you give them an exclusive time where they can sponsor new events and assets that you may have created. No one likes to sponsor something and then find out later that you developed something even better and you didn't offer it to them. So you want to be in a position. Now, you're not trying to nickel and diming them, and you're coming to them and saying, I am not looking to get you to do something else, but I want you to be aware of some things before anybody else sees it. And I think sponsors appreciate that. Now, here's what I know. You can delegate everything in this process except for the responsibility, because you're the salesperson and the buck stops with the salesperson. Now, how do you successfully do account servicing? First thing I think you do is you agree to the objectives up front, what both parties want to get out of this, and put it in writing. Establish criteria for measuring against those objectives. Thirdly, develop a system that ensures that while you go through that process, you get the credit. Do monthly updates, not at the end of the contract or the end of the year. Monthly updates in order to make sure you stay on task. Do planning sessions regularly together and constantly look to tweak the master activation plan. Focus on solutions and not assets. Remember, way back, we talked about selling fan services rather than assets. Same thing here. Focus on solutions and not the letter of the law. Focus on how you can accomplish things versus contractual elements. Always give them a detailed recap report. Share the magic and act like their agency, because you are now one of their agencies. So let's close our tutorial with a final review of all 12 steps. And again, I'm a big believer. You can have your own system. This is my system. If you'll follow my system sequentially and completely, I think your batting average is going to go up. Remember, step number one, the most important step, the foundational step, the philosophy of the balanced Trinity ecosystem. That triangle, what's good for the property, must be good for the sponsor, must be good for the fan. Step number two, the architecture. What do you as a property have to sell? What kind of things do you currently have, or what kind of things can you create that will add value to both the sponsor and to the fan? Number three, where's the fit? Who makes sense for your property? Number four, diving into the weeds, who are your targets? Who are the prospects you want to go about to reach, to be able to sell your assets to? Step number five, my favorite part of it, and the thing I think I'm best at, engineering. Where's the bait? Where's the contextual big idea that ties the sponsor to the property to enhance the fan? Step number six, qualify them. What's their timing? Do they have the money? Do they have the resources? Are they a great cultural fit? We're trying to build annuities here. We're trying to build people that will be here with us for a long time as we arrange marriages. Step number seven, remember, we develop a customized proposal every time. And customized doesn't mean you do word search and fill in one name for another name. No. It means a customized proposal. Step number 8, how do we present? We present with magic. We're in the events business. Go in there and share the magic and get them excited about this to a point they want to be a part of it. Step number 9, the courtship, the dating. How do we answer their questions? How do we get them to the altar? Step number 10, we're getting married. How do we document that in a way that the marriage is going to last? Step number 11, how do we develop that activation plan that's going to tie everything together and help the sponsor meet their business objectives? And finally, step number 12, how do we implement the plan? How do we implement the contract? And how do we service the sponsor? Now, I sincerely hope this has been helpful to you with these 6 sessions. Now, get out there and make me and the whole industry proud of you. You can and will be successful. I'm going to close this with the saying that I've closed every speech and every seminar I've ever done. Remember this: life is like a dog sled race. If you ain't the lead dog, the scenery never changes. Be the lead dog, and God bless.